Let's look at it.
480 or something.
I'm not subdivision ready. 4 bedrooms will make.
Rental on its way.
Ready for me. I said, I'm not gonna walk.
Right, be a good one to flip for renting.
Pond.
No. Figure out, shooting squirrels in the backyard and then.
Walk by to see what your house is
It's
exactly.
nice looking on the inside. It
Okay,
looks a
keep that
little,
in mind, though.
looks a little.
Oh, is it the one that has been B&B, it's been like Airbnb'd for a while? Is it on the east side?
So you can shoot things.
Side pond?
I think so. I think I read this.
Walk down pond in a while.
357 height.
This makes the dog walk.
Very.
Yeah. I take the squirrels and crows.
Well, he's.
Well, Milo, she just redid
Yeah, they're fine.
Pond Street. And it's a street that it's the house that was at Corky College, Corky and Eric Bienfeld and stuff.
Gonna have.
It's a nice, is it a Cape, nice gardens? I bet it's that, and yeah, Milosh, that guy, it seemed like they had a lot of damage, frozen pipes, and it was kind of, the place got gutted, and then it's been in there working on it for the last 6 or 8 months. Yeah, so that might be the one that's inside, but that is a nice house. That
Can't buy anything, right? Cause you know everything. about- Yeah,
True.
can't buy that one, there's a fire there.
Yeah, that's why I remember there was a fire there, but when the firefighters can go. That looks new.
All right, so I think we're gonna have, Rob's not gonna be able to join us today. Thank you, everybody. So this is, the Monday, June 23rd, meeting of the Good Neighbor, special committee. The agenda was shared around, Amanda shared the agenda around. I assume everybody got it. I don't have copies of it. I could.
Oh, I was looking for it too. I couldn't find it.
All right,
Find
I
what?
could also
Good
not find it. I don't think I got that one.
what's that?
You didn't get it.
You didn't
I,
get it?
no, I didn't
Yeah.
get that.
All right, let me forward it to you.
And forward it to everybody.
Yeah, Good Neighbor Committee.
In fact, I thought, oh, we don't have any homework.
Yeah, well,
I thought it was because we didn't get through any of last week's.
we didn't leave a lot.
3 out of 7 for Dan's list.
Yeah, we'll return to that. So here it comes. Gracie, you're on it. So. Here you go. And Amanda's gonna make some copies. So
Excuse me.
Nice.
thanks for joining. And on our agenda today, just to go through who's here, we've got, Rob's not gonna be able to join us today. I'm Dan DeMario, we have Leo Kenny, Matt's here, walking in now. Hey, Matt, just starting.
Door's locked. Can you do that?
This door over here? Yeah. Okay. We've got Jody, Dennis, Chad, Cynthia's not gonna be able to join us, Brian. Gracie, you're online, and is there anyone else online? Lori online, Lori Sadako? Okay, I didn't,
Dan, I saw Diane walk by. I think she just went to,
oh, okay,
so she's here.
good. We'll put that down under old business and then we'll get there when she gets here.
Here
We'll-
she goes.
Yeah. All right, so when we talked last, for today's agenda, we had, we were working on, we had several things we didn't get to last week. So on the 16th, we spent a lot of time talking about the disorderly property ordinance and where we were gonna go with that. And I thought we gave some good direction, and we'll get an update later in today's meeting about
Sorry.
town attorney consultations and where we're gonna take that. And when we do get to that point in the agenda, I'd like to also talk about kind of a timeline in terms of when we might want to bring things to council to move that in orderly. If there's something we think we can do this summer, what the timeline would look like for, council consideration, council discussion. But at the, we did, the last time we had homework, we didn't get we spent so much time talking about the disorderly property ordinance at our last meeting, we didn't really get a chance to talk about our definition of a good neighbor. So I guess I would like to kind of go back and talk about what we think that should be. And ultimately just to remind folks, we've got at the second page of this link, if you click on it, remind folks, we're talking about doing an infographic, like a 2-pager, like a 1-pager, kind of the good neighbor piece, and then on the back of it, sort of renters rights in Orono, and just sort of a document that has that opportunity to educate people. Almost like an orientation type document in terms of what that means. So if we want to talk about, we got some, and I think at the lead of it, I'd envision, certainly open to other ideas, kind of a general definition of what a good neighbor, how we're trying to define what a good neighbor is, and something to kind of guide our decisions in terms of when we're looking at ordinances and things like that. So, and if you have access to your email, and I apologize if you don't, the second page, you click on, if you hit the agenda and you hit the second page, we got several, we got 11 different suggestions that came in from people in terms of that homework assignment.
The documents behind the password wall. Asking me for a password.
All right, it was a handout I had.
Yeah, we had it last week.
Well, we can go to the agenda center for the town.
I just went through the agenda center for the town and. done the
Which one are you
document
talking about?
documents.
Article 3, disorderly property? It's passworded?
Being a good neighbor in Orono, so these are,
That's weird.
you able to get it?
Yeah, it's not, I'll opt out.
These are some hard copies I had from last time.
Go and see Amanda.
I got it too,
I think Mitch is gonna make.
yeah, click on that, documents from prior meeting, and it's number 2. I prepped extra hard for the last meeting.
Let you in.
Have mine in my.
I've got it here.
Do you have?
I'm not saying that's true, but somebody else like that could get in, that'd be a good test.
See it? Not yet. Except for past documents. Could just be Brian. Brian might be just be the problem.
Okay.
All right, so why don't we just go through these and see if there's a consensus on things that make sense. This is much longer than I think the definite, I mean, I'm thinking the definition would be a sentence or two, kind of, and this is pretty comprehensive. This would be broader than that. Gracie, I'm gonna make sure I didn't do a good job of like calling you out to call you into the conversation on every item. So I'm gonna make a point of calling you in as we talk about these things, okay?
Sounds good.
Yeah, I know it's hard to sometimes jump in when you're virtual. So number 1, is respecting the speed limit in residential neighborhoods, stopping at stop signs. This racetrack issue, the broad throughway. Thank you, Mitch. How do people feel about this one, and do we capture it already in our Orono stops kind of work? And is there a broader way to get it with like safety or something like that? It's a term that is more encompassing.
I think
like
that
it.
honestly, the point number 1, like respecting the speed limit in residential neighborhoods, I think that applies to a safe and supportive community, which is the opening line of point number 11. And so I'm wondering if finding a more succinct way to make those 2 points about safety would help kind of shorten and make the document a little bit more succinct.
Like that? Anybody have anything to add to that, kind of combining?
Moving 11 up to 1,
Yeah.
or 1 to 11, that seems like a foundational.
Yeah, I think safety is the most important thing. I mean, that's what we all talk about, is
Yeah.
first and foremost.
And 1 seems a lot like an enforcement issue as much as anything. We've got all these stop signs, which were the result of our previous terrible infraction 20 years ago. And, you know, I live near a corner and they get a wink and a nod from most people.
They actually do use as a racetrack. I mean, I know that they race right through North Main, like they purposely are going as fast as they can at 1 in the morning. And there's I don't know about Crosby, but there's a hill, so it's blind. So if there's anybody out there, they will hit them.
Crosby's such a straight shot that, even with the stop signs, sometimes there's quite a lot of speed.
Yeah, they always roll down.
And could you,
Criminal speeding citations, probably sort that out, because I'm sure they're going 30 over.
Yeah.
Right?
Chad, we're gonna put a 45-degree bank in at Chad's corner there, so we can get people, so they don't go into the river. down there.
Yeah, it's down there in that corner is bad, but Clinton had mentioned some the speed bumps maybe or something that might be addressed, whatever, but I'm not sure if we could, maybe it would be a pain, but over on maybe on Pine Street or maybe some stop signs, because people race down Pine Street like they used to do over North Main, and I've seen a lot more kids out playing, especially on that corner that we live on. Someone's unfortunately gonna get hurt. So if stop signs, or I'm not sure, it would be inconvenient, but if they can stop, it might save a kid's life or something.
I know in Webster side, there was a traffic engineering report a couple of years ago. And it said the stop signs exist, not because they have a load that justifies a stop sign, but just as speed control, and stop signs are bad for speed control. Just put a speed table in. That's a report that came from the town 3 years ago, and nothing's happened on it, but they certainly are scofflaw stop signs these days. Probably not just from the younger drivers.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
they just roll, not even roll. They
Yeah.
You remember?
Property.
You remember?
They never, because they go
20-year-old
right through and go into Hoover Run.
I remember 20-year-old,
Do we have stop signs, the solar ones that flash when you're going too fast? So I'm just trying to think of town where we have those.
we have them, you know, obviously we have them in some places, when we're collecting radar, collecting data on some of them, that's really helpful.
One on Main Street.
And, those aren't stop signs, those are speed signs.
Speed signs.
But, you know, infrastructure is a big part of it. You know, our kid was at Derigo State at Colby this weekend, and they've done a remarkable job of building infrastructure around their campus that is, I'm sure that there's college money, well, we got a college too, but a different kind of financing, but they've done a remarkable job of building out the raised bumps and the crosswalks. So there's infrastructure there that creates it slows people down. Even this weekend with the barrels that were on the bridge. I mean, of course, the bridge was bumpy, but those barrels there, we walked across the bridge a couple different times. You just feel safer because you have those silly plastic barrels there. Yeah.
Well, the build out at North Main Street onto Route 2, the way that was narrowed and the angle was made more acute has definitely slowed down traffic, in my opinion, on North Main in the Webster Park neighborhood. Because you can't just haul off of Route 2 and you can't do it. And so
not
things
an
like
off-ramp
that kind of
anymore.
infrastructure does make a difference. I agree.
All right, so it sounds like moving that first piece of 11 up to the top is being a good neighbor means helping to create a safe and supportive community. And it's a good way to capture that, and then lean into when we talk about good neighbor responsiveness, and look at kind of those infrastructure opportunities we may have that we've been looked at.
Can you just recap, maybe I missed it because I was trying to find the document, but recap what we're editing or going through this document for?
Trying to come up with a succinct couple of sentences of what being a good, kind of I don't know if it's a mission statement or what, but that kind of key overarching, what is it to be a good neighbor in Orono, how we want to define it.
I mean, I'm all in favor of an overarching statement, but when I think of educational materials, I don't assume people are gonna pick out a word and pop it into a whole concept.
Yeah.
So I think it has to have a bullet list of traffic safety, trash, cleanup, right?
Yeah.
All these things have to be expanded into full bullet points if we want people to actually follow through on them.
Yeah, I think it's got to be like an infographic style document that looks good on the website, can be printed in color and leads to and aligned with, social media campaigns and things like that in terms of
But it needs to have some details,
yeah, no, absolutely.
not just a overarching feel-good statement.
I agree.
But probably like removing the park community drivers using residential streets like a racetrack, right?
Right.
Yeah.
These are just,
That's commentary that, you know,
Right.
it's emotional that people, it's what's kind of behind it.
and this,
Isn't true though? I live in Orono 11 years. I've seen that a lot.
Yeah.
And it's hard for PD to get it. You know, I've only called in once, shame on me, but by the time PD arrives, they're where they need to be. They're gone.
Yeah.
You know, and so the infrastructure thing is interesting because if you could physically slow them down so they can't do that, great. Stop signs only work on people who pay attention to signs. If you're going 60 and 25, are you the kind of person who stops at a stop sign? Maybe not, but speed bumps work. You know, radar, I don't know if they can issue criminal speeding to someone
do it that way.
off of automated radar, but that might be a solution. But the racetrack thing happens every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
And you see,
Data on Forest Avenue with those tables yet?
we do,
How that's.
and yeah, we have, in our last community development meeting, we had some data shared with us on from the different. And the challenge is the intermittent nature of the speed. It's not, you know, if people are going on average 9 miles an hour over, okay, but it's the person that occasionally goes by 30 miles an hour over. And Chad shared some ring footage from his house with us the other day, a couple of us, where, you know, kids are playing in the street.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's safe, but it's in that one time when there's an intersection between the souped up Subaru with a spoiler on the back and the, you know, and literally get little firecrackers in the muffler. I don't know if you've seen this, you know, seen this young person. And, you know, the time they're whipping around the corner, like they're, you know, that's the time that,
And I've
tragedy strikes, right?
I'm out in my garden all the time. I don't holler at kids that were speeding. And one kid stopped and wanted to fight me. This is last year, and I said, I'm not trying to fight you, I'm just trying to warn you. I said,
Yeah.
I could imagine hitting a kid, how you could live with yourself for the rest of your life.
Chad, you know, so we have a stop sign right on our property, and I mean, I'll be right out there at the stop sign and just watch them go. So I used to run after them, and when they would park, I would talk to them, and I've done that a lot. I mean, I've done that probably 50 times.
Yep.
I've gone over to people, but the best thing I did, and you can do this too, is I've recorded the license plate and I've called here, and Officer Lusky, or civilian Lusky, went over to their house and just said, hey, listen, you know, these people have dogs, these people have kids, you can't see over the hill, this is dangerous, and we just want you to know. And then that person actually stopped at the stop sign for at least a month. You know?
That's a start.
But I mean, you know, it is something,
Yeah.
and he does, I don't know if he still does that, but it's a nice service that they provide.
Dan. And again, not from, I mean, from a perspective of the whole, and I mean, we need something quickly communicable about what it means to be a good neighbor.
Mhm.
And then we need the things that we say, and I might regret saying this, but again, back when we were doing a few things around Orono stops, I was pulled aside on election day by a resident that said that they were frustrated a little bit by Orono stops, because these are the things that everybody knows. And I said, but we're telling them again. And I think there's something starting here with this conversation, this group. When you say it again, and I was thinking this before you said it, it worked for a month.
Mm.
That's the realistic expectation, I think, of what we're doing in here. No matter what we do, if it's not going to be nonstop all the time, it's gonna be hard to get to measured change. I mean, the data, I mean, and I'm not gonna pick on a community, but we've been pulling data on speeding stops in those surrounding communities. Different communities get the reputation of being high on stopping speeders. We were, what was it, 50 times more? 50 times more speeding tickets issued in this town than one of the non-speeding towns that we all know about. And I guess you just gotta kind of sit back and say, what's the rationale here? I mean, we're doing more and we're enforcing more. And I guess when we come through this, getting this really good statement, getting that marketing plan is gonna be great. But I think a lot of what we're talking about is enforcement. And that's a resource that we're directing a lot better. We're doing more. But again, it's big town.
We need
There's,
to go speed bumps then.
yeah.
Are those numbers due when students were in session, more tickets issued?
It was a year. We just looked at it full year, just a year. We didn't look at day, week, month, or anything like that. We just said, what's going on in the year?
Yeah.
I mean, and yeah, that one, did you say none?
None.
One community had no speeding?
Oh, yeah.
That wouldn't be feasible.
Yeah,
Just the way they're talking, I bet it is.
Easy.
so anyway, that's
These
just,
are less than, I don't have any speakers.
No, but is that because they're not enforcing it, or is that because the enforcement worked? See, you need to ask different questions, because it may be that there are fewer tickets issued there because we've all been trained not to speed.
yeah.
there.
Good.
So I would say there's like a deeper dive.
But if your training was getting tickets,
Right.
we should be getting trained.
Oh,
Right?
yes.
Shows that it works. I
Given the
mean,
ticket,
it's
so-
actually.
Yeah.
But so that goes back to the, and if close the loop, I shared with you, I don't know if you need, I guess I'm just worried about if we're gonna create a definition that is the list of everything. I think it's gonna get problematic. I think we
agree.
do need to have that overarching statement of what it means to be a good neighbor. And then inside that, like Brian's getting at these bullets of, you know, and that can be changed fairly easily, but the
Yeah.
overall statement of, you know, and that's when I, you know, I told you I played with everybody's comments and what you gave me in the AI and
Yeah.
just came up, you know, whether there's some 5 principles of what it means to be a good neighbor.
Yeah, we could, if you wanna reply all, we could share that with people if we wanna see if we wanna kind of wordsmith it.
Oh, did you just, yeah, I'll do it right now.
And maybe I think part of this exercise is we're gonna pull these bullets out of this. So I think we're gonna pull, the bullets Brian's talking about are things we're gonna pull out of this discussion, you know, the safe and supportive community. And then that means, you know, what that means. So,
Can I make one point?
yeah, sure.
So to his point about the resident giving feedback, everybody knows this, right?
Right.
What is one thing that is core to everything we've talked about that makes Orono super unique in Maine? The average age in Maine median is about 44. What's the median age in Orono? It's 550 municipalities in Maine. We are the youngest municipality in terms of median age by a lot.
Except for Castine. Castine is younger than us.
Really?
Yeah.
Because-
Last time I
because-
saw
so
it,
because
yeah.
it's small. Yeah, sure.
And they have Maine Maritime Capital.
So,
Yeah.
so
Overall, the other percent.
can you over communicate this? I'm not sure you can, because our age demographic is so unique for Maine.
Right.
And it's
Right.
also continually changing.
Right, and
Every
it- that's a
year, the
great
tide
point, yeah,
washes in
right.
another round and exactly.
Order of the population changes annually, right? And so that's a
Yeah.
fantastic point. Yeah.
And that's part of the whole, you know, and we're rebooting this Orono Festival Days, so there's kind of two, so I've got a foot in both of those committees, right? We've
Yep.
got the Orono Festival Days coming together, so September 6th, we're gonna have this day of events and things, kind of a welcome celebration of all things Orono, a welcome to Orono. And it's an education opportunity as well, and, you know, we'll work with student groups and, you know, the university and neighbors to have some of that communication, because so many new people and young people are in our community.
Right.
Before we launched Orono Stops and, you know, good support by staff, I was really leaning on the fact that the inexperienced drivers, you know, the epicenter of inexperienced drivers is Orono, Maine. And I got talked off that term.
Yep.
You know,
100%.
but it's absolutely, I know how to get attention of, you know, TV producers, right? And that is absolutely a fact in Orono, and inexperienced drivers are 300% more likely to be in an accident. And that's a fact, and that's why 25, you know.
Don't
people-
believe us, believe insurance
Yeah,
underwriting.
or go try and rent a car, you
Who
know.
has the highest insurance rate?
Yeah. Yeah, so those kinds of.
20-something-year-old males, in fact,
Yeah.
highest insurance rates, right? So there's a reason for that.
And that's why this only in Orono is kind of something I think about, and there's something really unique about our community, and we gotta lean into it. We don't have the same issues that a lot of other communities have, because such a, you know, we have this great university and all that goes with it, and a lot of it's amazing. But let's think about how we lean into our work, our opportunities and obligations to kind of, you know, bring people along, so.
It's no different, right? We have inexperienced neighbors, right? People for the first time learning how to self-regulate and
Yeah.
have a parent supervise you as a neighbor,
Yeah.
so.
And yeah, they
They
don't
don't
have
have
the
first apartments, great point.
Yeah, they don't have the residence hall staff, they don't, you know, anymore, they're kind of in our community, so let's be honest about it, it's not, I don't feel like it's, some people, I don't feel it's targeting anyone in any way, I mean, it's just a reality of life, and parents know it, every parent knows it, you know, so.
Only in Orono, that could be something. You could have only in Orono and have your positive points and your be a good neighbor
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Seems very.
And you get alliteration, it's awesome.
Yeah. It's cool stuff.
Oh my gosh.
We have the, you know, the highest, we have the highest credentialed population by, you know, in like regular undergraduate degrees, and then when it comes to advanced degrees, we blow people away. There's also a little,
There's a nice sheet.
thank you. All right, so we got the Orono, the safety piece, and yeah, let's move this along. So how do we got,
I mean, I bet I could list the bullet points.
yep,
Drive safely. Keep up your yard and keep the trash out. Be respectful around noise, be respectful around serving alcohol to people visiting your house. I bet that captures 90% of what people are trying to say. Is there something I missed?
And as many as they're gonna read.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's two.
well,
Don't ruin your future by running over a kid. That's the quickest way to destroy your future.
Mhm.
respectful around noise, respectful around alcohol. Keep yard, drive safe. Really all you need? Come
Yeah.
double my driveway with, no? You're not gonna work that one in? All right.
Carefully.
How do we feel about articulating? Right now, our noise ordinances changes at 10 PM, and we've agreed that our noise ordinance isn't necessarily a great tool to engage disorderly properties. And that might be something we work on longer term, but how do we feel about the 10 o'clock time? As kind of something we communicate in terms of kind of when
Yeah,
quiet
and
out.
respectful of noise, I think you should, like having the 10 PM thing in there, I think is important. So people understand that's a very solid.
A lot of college students think 1 AM is early on a Saturday
I know.
night, so.
10 PM, we don't even know what we're doing yet.
You're pretty
Glad you like
Which
that, 'cause I
party?
said that one. Just turning as I thought we'd agreed.
We don't.
No, I know, I agree, I just wanna,
Okay.
I wanna make sure we check the box, you know.
Yeah,
get some
no,
consensus.
glad you did, double check it.
Or a lot.
And that's a doubler is what I told them. is just
Yeah,
make it-
doubling the fines.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that gives us a chance to communicate it, like, I mean, we gotta say, we mean it when we say 10 PM, and it's the fines are doubled, but, you know, the vigilance you're gonna get from your neighbors are gonna be higher at 9 PM. If the noise is high at 10 PM, you're gonna get higher fines, higher vigilance from your neighbors, higher responses from, you know, police department, and a kind of different take it up a notch in terms of,
If folks call PD after 10, is it anonymous for them or no?
Huh?
Well, some people who don't like conflict, this isn't me, by the way, I don't mind.
You always ask.
Some people would be not inclined to call PD to do a noise complaint because they don't, oh, I don't want my neighbor to eat, right? So is it anonymous, chief, if
You
someone
can always
calls?
ask.
911 call.
But I mean, is it does PD have to tell them your neighbor next door called us, or can PD say?
We don't usually.
Okay, so it could be.
We just say that
anonymous.
we've
Yeah.
gotten a complaint.
So maybe that's part of.
We
the
don't usually
communication.
say who it was. And even if they ask, we just say, well, you can figure it out.
Maybe that's part of the communication to say, hey,
Yeah.
look, you can call PD to report this after 10 and PD will keep it anonymous or whatever. I don't know, just to help people who
not
don't
required to
want
tell
that
them.
conflict with their neighbor, you know? Right?
I'm not required.
But you're right. I think I mean, I think in Webster, we're just like, oh, who cares? Let's just
Yeah, yeah.
call them. But I think there are people
Yeah,
who feel that
absolutely.
way.
I bet it's a majority.
I mean, particularly when you find that somebody's been assaulted in the neighborhood, you know,
Right.
certainly, could they go after me if they find out I'm the one? who
Yeah.
Called them and now they have a fine and they have to pay their landlord or whatever it is.
Yep.
Good point.
all right, good, so I feel like we'll bring this back into we'll wordsmith this into and maybe use a little bit of the AI, but we'll wordsmith it into something we can bring back to this group. Ideally, let's as a homework for us, Clint, maybe me, you and Rob will bring back a written version of this, you know, the 50 words or so version of this, kind of the overarching statement. And then back it up with bullets that phrases, catchphrase type bullets where we kind of for people to look at next week.
Yep.
So wordsmith and bullets. All right, I think that works. Thank you for that. Next on the agenda, if we're okay with that, we've done enough. So that kind of segued nicely into our communication plan and material progress report. So I think we've heard pretty clearly that we need, Tracy, you didn't have anything else on the good neighbor draft, right?
Nope.
Yeah, will you be able to look at a draft by email as we get closer to it and give us your thoughts?
Yeah, totally.
Um. On the communication plan and materials, so we'll bring this back to you next week with a rough 2-pager on with bullets, and probably won't have any production value at that point, but we'll have something for us to look at in a kind of rough format in terms of this is what it'd be. And then by the time we finish, we're gonna want to have something with some production of graphic type things that kind of pop out of the pop off the document. Does that make sense to people? That'd be the renters, what it means to be a good neighbor, the bullets on one side, and then the renters rights on the other side.
And I could ask a quick
Sure.
question in that. Alice Kelly is a neighbor of mine who asked me to ask you guys, and I wasn't sure about this because I didn't know how the property owners would feel about this, if they feel infringed, but she was wondering if you guys would have some kind of a model for them to put in the lease regarding some of these rules and ordinances. Because right now, I guess she uses like some type of a state model, something the state that she prints out to them that's very old. And I don't know if it would just be something that property owners can use if they want to, but something that would be
Yep.
somewhere.
Let's talk about that. I mean, as part of the communication plan then, I mean, in terms of particularly for the landlords here and those who, we talked before about like the lead paint disclosure thing that you have to do for the state, right? If you're 1978 or whatever it is. What's the path forward to be helpful to communicate this as landlords are engaging with their tenants?
One challenge you'll have is, there's 100 landlord, whatever the number is, I have no idea. I'm sure it's over 100, right? Trying to get 100 landlords to use precisely exactly the same contract language when they likely have 100 different attorneys and some of them are in other states and some of them are using it. That's hard.
Yeah.
To do that. You could make recommended language or something. You could do like we talked about before, have a required form like the state does. But I think it's just tricky to get that many people with that much to use the same language.
How would we advance that? And I'm asking like, what's if we want to have, say it's a required form, what's the best way to advance that as part of the registration process? Do we make it feels like a requirement is the right way to do it to make sure we get everybody.
Yeah.
And we'll make the big guys do it if we're gonna make you do it.
Right.
I've heard that before. So
If you're gonna do a required form, and listen, maybe I don't need to say this because Clint, your background, just be extremely cautious in legal review with it, because if you have 3 words off, it can cause, I remember years ago, we had 3 words that the Attorney General didn't like. And I got fined $5,000 for 3 words. So just keep in mind, it's gotta be really
I thought
tight.
we were informing people.
Yeah.
Educate, we enforce over here, but we educate. I mean, I think where we're at, we got people coming into us, they're adopting their own language, their own clauses that they're responsible for. I don't want to institute, I wouldn't want to insert us into that relationship between a landlord and their tenant. You don't want to do it, you want to do it, fine, don't give them that deal, but we're just gonna keep finding you and you'll keep coming in here and we'll deal with you there.
I think Diane's use case is, right, she's talking about somebody that rents to 1 or 2 people, right? Doesn't have the kind of experience or the kind of money that the people here have, and probably, but would just appreciate some sample language that could be slapped in.
Yeah, I don't think this is a required form, but I do think these definitions that we just talked about, here's a good neighbor. And I think in making the recommendation that, here's a page you can add into your lease and with initials at the bottom.
Exactly.
I think
Just
that's a good
download it.
idea to offer it. I don't think it's a requirement that we have to do this and send this back. I don't think
Okay.
that's.
I was imagining something that would be downloadable from some site that we are all on.
Okay.
We could certainly suggest, that landlords just, if you're inclined, we'd appreciate if you include this page of information that the town has worked up about, our good neighbor based on our experience. And if you could, you might want to include this in your lease, just so your tenants have it.
Okay.
I'm not sure that we can.
You're a bunch of softies. I like it. Do it.
Including fines, I think, too.
Yeah.
The fine language, putting that front and center, I think is.
Information sheet is perhaps safer for you because as Clint would know, if you get into language that gets signed, now you're inserting yourself in the contract. And you're gonna have to do what we do, which is have lawyers look at it annually to make sure it still complies with state updates to statutes or blah, blah, blah. Right? Cause you don't wanna run afoul of, you know, state attorney general by saying, hey, look, this would have been cool 2 years ago, but we changed stuff and now it's not cool. And since the town of Orono had this inserted into 100, 3,000 contracts and the fine is $5,000 per contract. Now you're talking a big, you want, maybe that's just not where you want to be, I guess, in terms of life. Yeah,
But the
information she would get you out of that.
is 100% more than we've got now. So,
Right.
doing that is a good step.
Yeah.
And they can't say that they didn't have it.
Yeah, right. Information sheet isn't a part of the contract
Correct.
either.
It's
So
the-
now
only
like
the
probably
handout
much
itself
deeper.
with- Yeah.
I would defer to Clint on that, but.
Anything?
I think if we kind of followed what Leo's talking about with a single, some type of single page thing. And I would have because on the lead paint, it's not part of my lease, but it's
Mhm.
part of the package that when they kick it out of the printer,
Yeah,
it comes and the person initials a copy, we keep acknowledging they received it.
yeah,
So if I had a one-page thing that I had to add to that and have them initial that they received, acknowledge they received it, I don't have a problem with that.
okay,
Great.
I don't think there's would be any legal ramifications on just the fact they acknowledge they received that.
yeah, okay. So sample, one pager, space for initials and voluntary for landlords to use as they choose to.
I would think that would be helpful for anybody who's trying to do enforcement too.
Yeah,
The
for
fact
sure.
that, hey, you do this.
Dan, just to be clear, this is not your infographic
Right.
copy thing that goes, on
Uh-huh.
Orono days. This is much more detailed and it says if you violate the noise ordinance, there's a $500 fine.
Right.
If you violate right, it's got some detail with some teeth to it, so people.
Yep. But make it voluntary, it's gonna be, we won't have any sense of who's using it, who's not using it.
Yeah.
But,
Just pushing the envelope in lots of directions.
yeah,
I think landlords would be supportive of using it. I mean, it
Yeah.
helps them regulate
yeah,
It
okay,
also helps you if you want to evict
Yeah,
somebody.
yeah,
know, so-
yeah.
If you want to evict somebody, you have them, oh, you initial this,
Yeah.
just more.
I think it's a step. It's a.
Yeah,
I think it's a
You
good
could
step.
also scope creep back into speeding, right? Like, stating that going 30 miles an hour over is criminal speeding, that's probably not a bad idea. Because most of the people who are doing that are younger folks who are here renting. So if that's in that sheet, it's just a good reminder for them to be like, ooh. Give example, I'm a juror this week and next week. The court sent us a document that said, hi, we're so happy to have you come in for jury selection. By the way, if you don't show up, there are civil and criminal penalties up to and including 3 days in jail. 300 grownups who were very busy, who didn't want to go, all went. Everybody showed up.
Yeah.
But it was that 3 days, and if it was said there was a fine, boy, I don't know, maybe I'd have been okay with the fine.
Yeah.
It was that 3 days in jail thing, I was like, I don't know that I'm so busy that
different.
I wanna.
That's the hill I want
3
to.
days in jail. I think
Yeah,
I'll go
that's the
for it.
difference.
So I'm just saying, stuff like that really can be helpful.
Uh-huh.
Help people say.
One of the root problems you're gonna find in this, and I find it over many years of bringing to this age group. You can have house rules. The people that are gonna go by the house rules, read them and understand them.
Mhm.
The ones that don't even read them, the
Yeah.
ones that aren't gonna pay any attention, and you're gonna run into the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just a certain segment of our society, regardless of age, that just doesn't.
Yeah.
Doesn't wanna comply with behaving themselves.
Yeah, so we have,
Isn't that right, chief? Isn't what he said right?
What Dennis said.
But you look at that, I read down through that being a good neighbor in Orono, and I'm thinking. If they were taught and learned that in home growing up by responsible parents, we wouldn't have to have this conversation about all of this stuff.
Yeah.
So what we're. I remember my wife was the director of a daycare for a while, and we were out with two other couples, one we'd never met before, and they played the usual game, well, what do you do like that? My wife said, I'm a director of a daycare, and they said, what do you do? And I said, I run a daycare for college students. Cause that's what you.
funny.
Never invited Dennis, thank you.
Yeah, no, the stories are,
With the communication, should we get this out to the Orono public, the people that live here? Like, hey, these are what we've come up with, being a good neighbor. Because some of our neighbors might not be good neighbors. They may be one speeding and the one leaving.
Yeah,
the
I think it
traffic.
applies to everybody.
Seems like a good thing to put in the Orono Observer.
Or, yeah,
Yeah, we'll get in the observer, we'll get it, you know, the communication plan will have ways to cascade it out to everybody. And again, this all will come through and we'll get, you know, we'll have orders in front of the council, so we'll have public discussions. That any member of the public, you know, if any member of the public wants to come and say, you know, I gotta have my litter on my lawn, don't do this to me, you know, they'll have their chance to,
I don't wanna be a good neighbor, you can't make.
yeah.
and you'll have some that
Yeah.
don't like to comply with.
When we first put up the stop signs, the biggest, or when the town first put up the stop signs in Webster, and this I think was before you guys moved.
Yeah, I mean,
The loudest complainer was
tell me.
professor that lives on Penobscot.
Oh, I
He
think
was so personally outraged that they had to stop multiple
Yeah.
times.
I think he got stopped just a couple of years ago and was like,
did.
this is not a real stop sign. It's a stop sign like in a parking lot and I can challenge this.
Yeah.
And it needs to be
Yeah.
here, and I'm allowed to go through it because I was here.
He didn't know how to, but anyway, so
It's a
exactly.
stop sign on my lawn. That's the new
Yeah.
one. So,
That's the.
Which those are not, I don't think they are proper stop signs.
no, they're not. You can challenge
It's-
everybody, challenge them and you'll win.
DOT has nothing to do with it.
All right,
And there is another communication piece though, which is the whole thing about reporting and how the town can't do much until.
that's
Yes.
gonna be, Diane's gonna be the poster child of, I will never knock on a door again. 911 is top, you know,
Right.
we're gonna have to do that, and we're gonna have to,
I was thinking about that.
good neighbors, no 911. You know, that kind of a little more alliteration for you,
Yeah.
and I'm
Publish non-emergency number 2, because some people might be.
I don't want,
That's what Dan's been working.
Yeah.
Dan's working on this with you guys to understand the difference of what you can call, and again, no, you don't call 911 saying, hey, what time's the dump open?
Right.
Similar situations, and this is, I mean, we can only teach you so much. There's a lot of great information out there on how to call 911. We're copying what others are doing. We're gonna share similar formats for Orono, but that's,
But
No.
I mean, at least when I was growing up as a kid, right, you didn't call 911 with frivolous stuff because there were people dying, right? That's what 911 was for. So I have never called 911 with a noise complaint. I've always called the non-emergency number.
Yeah.
But I'm hearing, I think, that you want us to call 911 because it's got the channels and
You're
report.
saying, right?
well, we're losing the battle. That if you don't call 911 and we don't show up, you think we've been derelict in our duties. So if you want someone to show up at your house quickly, because there's something going on, call 911.
But calling
Here.
866-4000 has always resulted in someone coming.
100%.
Not on the, but could be a day later,
No,
No,
not on 4,000.
yeah.
on for that. when it goes-
4,000.
I'd much rather that be the number that we call.
but we need to be able to communicate to the masses.
Yeah.
You can change behaviors, and it's like. it
Diana and
has-
I are sitting in this meeting and don't know what to call, so I'm pretty sure nobody in the whole town knows what to
Right,
call right now.
Right.
And it's gotta be 911. If you want the police there now, it's 911. If it's something the code enforcement officer can take care of on a Tuesday, 866-4000 or whatever it is. But it's gotta be 911 now. If you want a response now in your neighborhood, it's 911. Whether it's someone's being stabbed or someone's,
You're working on this document, trying to pull it all together. It's a lot of nuances. We're trying to get it.
Yeah.
I should be calling 911, not 866-4000 when it's just noise. It's just like, it's 1 o'clock in the
Is
morning.
it just noise that you think you're gonna
Just
walk
noise.
next door and talk to them about it?
Oh, that's what
Then you should call 911.
don't knock.
If you're going to
911.
engage, you need to call 911.
Yeah, before you insert yourself into a problem, you
Call
need to call
911.
911.
Yeah,
That
that's-
is the base.
That's the nuance.
If I called 866-4000, someone would come.
Yeah, 100%.
So Diane,
We would suggest you
what's
wait.
the resistance in you to
It's
911?
running. I'm like, and nobody's dying. You know, I mean, I've had fights underneath my window. I've had people knocking on my windows, coming in my house. I've called 911, but that's just a couple of times. I may have even called 866-4000 for that. But when it is just noise and it's just loud and I just don't feel like getting up.
It's the document that I kind of worked on with Clint is that I spent some time over a week ago now, where you can Google it, winter times to call 911, and there's dispatch centers all over the country that they say, call 911 for. The big ones that I saw were, immediate medical needs, car accidents, bar none, like car accidents are bar none. You know, anything for life safety. Suspicious people, cars or activities, but not the suspicious car that's been parked out in front of your house for a week. Like if it's been sitting there for a week,
Yeah.
you probably don't need to call me because it's been sitting there for a week, so nothing's changed. But if it shows up in front of your house at 1 AM and it's new, I would call 911.
Yeah, but it's a house party.
No, no,
It's
no,
not-
I'm saying, but
it's
if
not
it's
a
suspicious car, suspicious person or something like that. If you feel uneasy, this is one of those, this is gonna be one of those things where so we're discussing something, the 12 of us here in this room, that we're trying to communicate to 12,000
Yeah.
people. This is going to be my struggle. This is not my struggle.
Yes.
This is going to be the committee's struggle, is that if the 12 of us can't unanimously get on the same page, how do we get the entire community on the same page?
But 911 is the number you call, and I understand that's just easier.
It's the same
And then you
people
say,
answering the
well,
phone.
because it is like, it will go to dispatch and it's not, it doesn't have to be like blood on the,
Yeah.
on the street. Then I don't want you to start getting, well, if I can call for a party, maybe I can call for, you know, I'm so sick of that person parking 12 inches outside the curb and I have to go around them, or, you know, I'm just a silly thing.
There's a solution. You have a conditioning problem. Orono has people live here, they come from all over the country. I know, because I have their cell phone numbers as a landlord and they're from all over the country.
Not a lot of 207.
And
Yeah.
PD is a local thing that is handled differently all over the country. And so you will have a portion of your population that is conditioned to not call 911 because they live in Philadelphia or wherever. And they're like, oh, no, I can't call 911 over this. I could get in trouble, right? So instead of trying to deal with this barrier we have of some people will feel like hurt. And I feel that way too, really. I call non-emergency. Give them the option and say, hey, listen, if you're calling in a noise complaint, you can call 866-4000 or you may dial 911. Then the people who feel uncomfortable calling 911 because no one's breaking into their house or trying to kill them, they'll call the 4000 because they feel comfortable with that. The other people who are like, nah, listen, this is emergency. Give them the option. And that way you eliminate those barriers that you have from people living all over the country coming here with different PD backgrounds. Because once you have that PD background in your mind, because you grew up in a certain city for 30 years, it's gonna be really hard to change it. 'Cause that's your
30 years
feel.
I was in Buffalo, even not.
Right.
calling.
Exactly, yeah.
I disagree. I think it's, I think the first thing we're gonna do is get over this phobia people have about calling. Like, I'm a bad neighbor if I call, you know, I'm a good taxpayer, and if you're an Orono resident, you're a good, you know, you're paying some taxes, you're getting some services. You have a police chief who wants you to call. We have a process that requires police involvement if you're gonna address the problem behavior in a long-term situation. So we gotta condition people to call. I don't know what
Conditioning's
866,
hard.
what's that?
Conditioning's
It
hard.
is. And it's gotta be, we gotta make it really clear and simple to people. And I think if you want the police now, it's 911. If you're thinking about knocking on somebody's door, you gotta not knock, but dial 911. I think that.
You can try and push
that's-
people in that direction, but I agree with that, put both choices on there.
Yeah,
There are people who, I'm 59, you're not gonna recondition me to call 911 when nobody's dying.
Yeah, I gotta get her to stop knocking on doors,
I will.
chasing down speeders. But if she's more comfortable using the 4000, that's fine, but it's gotta be call.
Yeah, I think it's easier to condition me, and because we do this, because we all cycle in Webster. Where when we are ready to damp it down, we all say, we all need to together call the police.
Yeah.
Whatever way you do it, whatever means, for our whole neighborhood, because if people don't call, then it's just gonna continue to escalate. So I am being a good neighbor by calling.
Right.
Even if I'm uncomfortable, because I don't want Brian to have to deal with trash on his lawn and people crossing over
Yeah.
and all the cars. And if I don't, then maybe it is gonna be, you know, the next party where somebody, you know, gets hit by a drunk driver or something like that. So I do think that we can get there.
Is it the same dispatcher at both numbers? And it goes to the same place, right?
Yes.
Chief, I mean, I think they even say 911 or like, you
They
know.
say 911 when you call 911. The
Yeah, when
non-emergency
I call
line.
866-4000, oh, maybe they say
They
dispatch.
say not cut dispatch, yeah.
Yeah.
I-
dispatch.
Operationally, do you have a preference?
You want them calling 848-4000.
I want everybody calling 4000. Yeah, if I wear, yes, if I wear my hat, life safety, like even when you Google when to call 911, there's like 5 or 6 things when you call 911, and Brian's got it nailed. 911 in its fundamental purpose is for life safety things. I need the police and fire department here right now. I have a fire on my stove. My neighbor just passed out. I got heat stroke. That is 911. If everybody called so I put on my broader hat that is I work in the county, right? And I also work here. But that dispatch center dispatches for every single municipality, unorganized territory, every single person in Penobscot County. So if every single person in Penobscot County called for a noise complaint on the 911 lines, that would tax them over their limit. They don't have the staff for that.
So 866-4000 though is unique to Orono. That's.
No, and that's the thing. So every community in the state of Maine has a non-emergency line, and that hub goes to Bangor as a non-emergency line.
But that
But
number
just
is our number.
that number is our number. So it has so in Hamden, it's 862-4000.
But it's the same dispatch.
Because it's the same
Yeah,
person.
okay.
They just changed the prefix that is unique to your town. So ours is 866. Orono, 862, Hamden. 827, Old Town.
8484 would
The
work.
app.
The number we had, that's why I keep spitting it out 10 years.
Very
that
important
number.
distinction.
But I will.
I used to run a telco, in Maine. And you and I both know that 911 trunks
Yes.
are a different thing, that are higher priority, that have regulatory rules in place that the telco has to
Yeah.
service them and keep them up and running. Non-emergency is less priority. So if the dispatcher has 3 911 calls and they have a noise complaint from her call's not getting answered right now, the 911 call.
It's actually,
Which is actually what we want.
it's a different system in the dispatching center.
So that's a super important distinction, just to put on my old telco hat,
Yeah.
like 911 is designed for life safety, it's regulated, it's run by telcos, it's a critical service. If a 911 trunk goes down, somebody is engaged immediately to fix it. If your non-emergency number goes down, that's a different priority level. 911 should be a priority if someone's kicking your door in.
Mhm.
If I'm angry because I don't like someone made a noise next door, that should, from a life safety standpoint, be a lower priority. So by giving people the option, you check off the cultural resistance box. Some people will call non-priority like me and you will all call out. Other people will call 911, great. But if you forcibly corral everyone into 911, number one, you're gonna get less calls because some people won't feel comfortable with it. Two, you run a risk, maybe not a huge one, but some level of risk that the person whose house just got home invaded gets a less response time by 8 seconds because she called in a noise complaint,
Siphoning off
which is not a
resources.
great outcome, right? Because that problem, home invasion's this big, noise complaint is this big, so they should be treated differently.
So this used to not be as much of a problem. We used to actually, before my time, 20 years ago, we used to have our own person that sat in the office upstairs that our current administrative assistant sat in. And we could give much more, so this is to some degree about local control and local service. We could give you that local service where you would call and talk to Clint because he's sitting in the office at 2 o'clock in the morning. And he could directly go downstairs or call downstairs and say, hey, go there.
Yeah.
Money being what it is, consolidation, regionalization being what it is. We don't have that service anymore, so it's in Bangor. So like I said, we, all of our service, we get direct, I don't even know the people that I talk to on the other end of the line when they call us. It's just a name on a voice and they tell me to go here and I go there. That's practically how it works here now.
But it will get the 866-4000, will get dispatched to officers who are on duty to respond to. And if it's not a life safety, your preference is to use.
My preference has always been 4,000, but that's because I know that there's a figure. Play.
I think you're all wrong, but I don't always get to be right, so let's get people calling, and if 866-4000 is the number, it doesn't help with the alliteration as much, but we'll be creative about it. Let's get people using that number, and we'll get people, we're gonna need champions in our neighborhoods telling people, yeah, this is okay for us to call. This is our process, use this number.
And that's an only Orono thing too.
I like it, thank you, you make me feel
I
better.
help
about
you
it.
with your alliteration.
The only Orono, you gotta use that.
Yeah.
Some sheet.
The only thing I would add
And
is you may want to consider using both for the simple reason of if you are directing people what to do, your language isn't super specific.
Yeah.
And they do have a life-threatening
Mhm.
emergency and they call the other one, you might have a little liability. So it might be good to just give both, hey, look.
No, and that's where I've been coming into this.
Okay.
I'm getting nervous because of the comments this community makes, that a person doesn't know which to do. If you don't know what you should be calling, there is no question you should call. You call 911. That's what I'm trying to motivate, because I think some people are you're overthinking things. And you're like, oh, well, it's not a big deal. They're my neighbors. I don't want to be bad. And the next thing you know, an aggravated situation ensues.
It's all up, but
That makes
Just
sense.
just call 911. You don't know what to do.
if it's an
Yeah.
emergency though.
But again, you're making the assumption that every citizen in the United States and Orono
Yeah.
knows the difference. They don't.
Well, you could. but
They
I-
don't know the difference.
And a situation can evolve too.
We'll put them both, we're gonna put them both out. We just wanna make sure people don't do what he just said is, oh my gosh, they got a gun, they're waving it around. Well, I don't think they're gonna shoot anybody. You know?
But there's an
maybe
evolution.
Call 866
There's an
4000.
evolution of situation thing that happens in seconds, right? This event that brought us all here, that would have possibly started as a noise complaint call, but it ended with an assault,
Right.
right? And so that approach is maybe safer from a liability standpoint for the town. Encourage, you're giving them both, right? Hey, listen, if you're not sure, call 911. If it's a life-threatening emergency, call 911. You also have the option, if it's not those, to call it, you know what I mean? Something where the town doesn't get in trouble someday for someone who acted like an idiot, was like, it said to call 4,000. Well, it didn't say that for someone with a weapon, robbing a bank, did it? Right? Just be careful about that, because there is the stupid fact. There's a lot of people out there that maybe aren't the sharpest pencils in the
Well,
books.
you also have your elderly population
Yeah.
folks who are just, we said, Brian said, I'm gonna call 911, and they're trained to call 911. You're not gonna change it.
Sure.
So.
All right, so the biggest hurdle is to give them a call.
Yeah.
Start the process. We'll get it,
We're working on that.
we're working on that. So the update on the ordinance review, Gracie, who are you gonna call?
The non-emergency number.
Okay, thank you.
I can do this quick. I can tell you where we're at.
Yeah, let's do both of these two items 4 and 5 at the same time.
Yeah, so we're with the attorney. I mean, I got a lot of good gut instincts on where you were headed. So they came down to about 8 bullets to hit just on the disorderly property ordinance. Kind of the general discussion, some of the notes. Get rid of the size of the apartment being a component of the fine. And convert to whether the number of people are in attendance. So the fine's now based upon, do you have less than 20 or more than 20? So is it a small party or a big party, kind of general theories? Those are the two we were gonna get at.
You
How
gonna
does
get rid of
that-
those, or you gonna keep them?
We're getting rid of the size of your apartment.
Yeah,
We're going with the number of people you have there.
okay,
If it's less than 20, it's a lesser offense, it's the regular offense. If it's over 20, you're gonna get into the doubling of a fine.
So if they can't, like the last week, they were talking about, well, we could go there and they could just close the door and shut off the lights and can't get in. I mean, the thing that I think I learned from that is, well, the next day you can still talk to the landlord and they can still get a fine. But they won't be able to say, you don't count up the number of people,
Correct.
but at least they'll still get a fine.
Correct. So then the next one is that first offense is make sure the landlord and tenant get a fine. And playing some number games, I'm gonna have them work with it, but the initial attempt was a $600 fine of 300 and 300. Then once it's over 20, and I use the premise, I said, we gotta look at doubling it. But if we did double it, it would have been 600 and 600 for 1,200 for over 20 first offense. So I asked the attorneys for some feedback on what they thought, or should we split it to 300 and 600, knowing that eventually that $600 will go back to the tenant anyways. And then keeping the language that every repeat offense in the 365 timeframe is a doubling. And then also add in that any event after 10 PM that's a disorderly property is a doubling. So again, 10:30 at night, first time you get a call, you're automatically into the doubling situation because it's after 10. So it would be, in that first offense under 20, it would be 600 and 600
okay.
After 10,
after 10.
first
First
offense.
If it's after 10 and over 20, it's 1,200.
Yep.
I
When I did a little bit of research on this, and of all the things that came out, there was a thing on the radio that somebody was fined $100 in 1921. And then today's value, that's $2,200. I'm like, you know what? This is less than $100 fine 100 years ago, so we're not far.
So everyone's good, but I mean, 10 o'clock is early for a lot of people, I think. And I'm just wondering if that's a necessary step to be doubling just because it's past 10.
So
We can change it.
We're increasing the fine already. And then, and you know, I don't know that I know.
So one point that Mitch just brought up that was a good thing, he just mentioned an aside. I think that there could be concern from my perspective if we start talking about the tenants. So what happens if you have a 365-day property where this month it's Leo and Dennis, and then next month their lease expires and it's Chad and I? Do they get do Chad and I get the doubling fees because
That's
of
why I
the
split it.
previous?
That's why it's two languages. It's tenant language and it's landlord language.
Because
It's
the
two
landlord
components of
ID
one fine.
See,
It's gonna get weird, but you may have a different tenant getting the same fine. It may be the second offense for the landlord, but a first offense for a tenant.
Okay,
so,
Can we talk about,
that would be the nuance, I think. That would be in for.
it seems to me that there's a disorderly as the ordinance is written now, right, there's a disorderly property designation that the chief and the town manager are empowered to make. And that's what happened at 80 North Main, right? That's been done. That's a disorderly property right now. Is that if you show up in their disorderly activities that you gauge and assess to see if a property is gonna be designated as disorder, is your vision that the ordinance has a fine involved for disorderly activities? Or is the fine only applied once a property becomes a disorderly property? Because one's a verb and one's a noun, right? Is that kind of how I'm? So when do we get into the fines? Do we get in the fines because we showed up on at 10:01 PM and there are 21?
So you wanna give people a $300 and $600 fine for having loud music at 3 PM?
I do not.
I was seeing this as that these are the activities.
Yeah,
If you meet enough and the police officer makes their judgment that we've hired them to do.
Yep.
That it's enough activities to be a disorderly property, they are designating it a property.
so to make that designation and the fine comes at the same time that the designation is made.
So
And if the next
Yeah.
Monday, him and I are looking over this, well, if we think that an officer maybe made a bad choice and let them go when they should have written it up, because we had, you know, and again, 412 phone calls came in saying that was a bad party and we're upset and, you know, so we'll counsel with the officer and we'll, just the two of us will say, okay, you know what, we're kicking out a disorderly property. Because the ordinance allows it to be, it does not have to be at that moment. It can be at that moment, or it could be at a later moment.
but there can be that night an issuing of a fine,
Correct.
because I think that focuses the mind for the people who are holding that party quite a bit.
Yep.
Good.
So that's what we're moving towards.
So
And
you-
that's why I asked, that's the next bullet.
so you become a disorderly property basically the first time that the police come to the house, if they get a fine. If they don't get a fine, maybe or maybe not, I mean, can
The
you
same
not?
as a speeding ticket. You're doing 12 over, the officer pulls you over. You don't always get a speeding ticket. Sometimes it might be just, hey, this is a warning, go along your day.
Okay.
Up to the officer to
Okay.
make good judgment in their professional
Okay.
capacity,
So
whether to do it or not.
police officer makes that distinction if
Yep.
it's a disorderly property. And then, and no one else really knows. If they get
Except the
fined,
beginning of the week, if it happens on Saturday night,
okay.
all disorderly
Oh, okay, I
potentials
see.
will be reviewed.
You know.
Because that's the current rule. The manager and the chief
Okay.
can give a disorderly property designation.
That makes sense to
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
because, you know, you can inadvertently get kind of carried away and be a little loud without it being a problem group over time,
Yeah.
or a repeat
we-
in situation, I mean.
So the next one, I do want to ask this, because this is what I'd heard, is that the landlord must attend in person, no Zoom, no other material, no phone calls, in person. If they don't attend, we'll double the fine.
When for that? When did that happen?
First time.
Oh, like that month?
Disorderly property, landlord, you gotta meet with the chief. I think the ordinance says it's 2 weeks. Give them the notice, you got 2 weeks to come into our office and meet with us. You don't come in person, we're doubling your fine. You choose to live in California and not be able to come in person. Your choice to run properties in Orono, you can't come in person. I'm taking a tough love approach. It's not a big deal, it's just gonna double your fine.
The process now is what, they can Zoom?
They said the
Doesn't
property
say.
manager.
We would just let them.
Every time they get fined, the property owner has to come meet you?
In person.
So they'll keep doubling with every double.
Yep, could get pretty expensive.
I would say discretion.
We gotta run these through and see what's gonna happen as they go, but I mean, I think.
I think the main thing is getting their face at the table and not like they're just sitting off and they've got a property manager, they're gonna get a report on it later. I think, so if they are in California and they Zoom, okay, at least they're connected.
So Zoom,
If they choose not
Okay.
to, well, then that's a choice also, I think, and that's what.
Listen, I gotta say one thing, okay? I have a bachelor's in computer science. If you double the number 10 times, it's 1,000 times as big. 1,024, actually. So careful of the doubling. Like,
Well,
maybe
you're
we
gonna,
should
it's
make
gonna
that,
run into
because
a point where a
the
person,
doubling could reach millions, you know?
it's not gonna reach millions because our ordinance says that, and again, this is where we're at with the attorney, because I said, I don't even know how we do it. I don't know if we can remove their ability to run as a rental. That's the last question. You've skipped ahead of me. But what's gonna happen is gonna get to a point where it is egregious. We can't give them egregious fines. That's why I've asked the attorney, where do we go with this? Can we remove them from the registry? Can we force them out of running rental properties? I don't know. That's the question that we end with.
Right.
And so you'll have to stay tuned.
Just
This is the
suggesting a
update of
cap.
what we're kind of working through right now.
I'm just suggesting, you know, because
With fine.
$1,000 fine could become a $1,200,000.
So far, so good.
24,000.
They're reviewing it.
After 10 infractions,
They're reviewing it.
you know, that would lose.
We do it now.
It might.
I know the power. of the
I'm
two,
changing
but-
way before. That's why raise the water rate, raise the sewer rate.
Yes, and they paid them both.
You get the fine big enough, you get somebody that.
Well, I mean, again, I've been a manager for 20+ years. As long as it's a reasonable fine, it's usually enforceable. And right now, we're still in reasonableness.
Jody?
This is really interesting and it's gonna be really interesting to see where it settles out. Personally, I do not have a really strong opinion as to how we get there, whether it's through fines or showing up in person. I do think it is important with problem houses to get the attention of the property owner, just like we're getting the attention of the people throwing the party by the fine on the spot.
So Zoom's okay.
So.
Oh, no.
I don't know. We're gonna find out if we decide to give it as an option, maybe for the first offense, but maybe it's not an option.
Yeah, second.
Yeah, by the second
Offense, it's like, you know, clearly this hasn't been cleaned up. My point is, we won't. we
Think about
won't-
that.
we need to be addressing, we need to be holding the landlord, especially of problem properties, at least as accountable as we're holding the landlords that are responsible, and certainly as the students that are making that are having the parties.
enough.
What happens when it's owned by a corporation or a business?
LLC or.
Who are we okay with that person being
Yeah.
representing that?
It's a fine point, and really, when Clint started that spiel, I didn't have him. I'm like, no, because I was thinking the same thing. Some of these might be owned by hedge funds. I mean, literally, or I've seen some documents come from New York City that appear to be something like a hedge fund to me. I don't know. Also, like, it's really hard to know who owns something that big. They make it really hard. But then he got me when he said, we'll double the fine. I'm like, oh, that's great. So they don't have to show up in person. They just get double the fine, which as a taxpayer, that sounds like revenue to me. That sounds fantastic.
So the
right?
question isn't necessarily the double of the fine, but who is the person that's acceptable?
Yeah.
Were they
They don't want to double their
They gotta
fine.
register, and they gotta put an owner's name and an address on the registration, right?
But if
They
it
put a business.
puts it in LLC,
So if it's one of the big three, I'd say the big three, they got a property manager. They have an owner, a company that owns it. So
Yeah.
who's the person that we are going to require to be the owner
They
in that
get bigger
situation?
fines.
Whoever they take as a representative, I guess.
I mean,
They can
that's
choose.
the question.
Well, that's.
They wanna pay an attorney, and put them on retainer to represent the owner, as long as it's not your management company.
Have your rep do it.
Right.
corporate
But
officer.
yeah, I see that's,
Corporate officer.
that's
Yeah,
problematic.
we can figure.
Yeah.
I think this is where
CFO.
there's a lot of nuances to every ordinance.
Yeah.
We're not gonna catch them all. This is one of those ones that I think we just gotta see what the attorneys say and
And we'll have to
tell us our.
feel our way through some of this.
I mean, make a corporate officer show up. Don't let them send their local property manager.
Go, look,
Somebody from the.
I think it really goes back to full circle. If, is it a problem that people, that we can't get anyone to show up and that we can't get people to do stuff? I don't, that's the problem we're trying to solve, right? We want people responsive, and we want them taking corrective action to the extent they can do it. Is that a problem? Is it a problem that we haven't? I thought I heard in years past, like, well, landlords won't respond and stuff, but I don't know if it's a problem or not. So I mean,
I mean, to be fair, I haven't had a problem for a couple of years, but the house next to me, the owner is in Massachusetts. He has an unlisted phone number. He has a property agent in Hamden who takes 3 to 4 hours to show up because who knows how many properties he's managing. There's just no accountability
To you or to the town?
to anybody. I mean,
Well, I mean, this is like enforcement's town, not your neighbor. I mean, I
That's
choose
fine,
to go
but-
that way.
this person is of an attitude of, I spent whatever, it was probably 200,000 back when he bought that house 20 years ago. I spent 200,000, it's a cash cow. And I don't have to put any time or effort into it because I siphon off 5% for the property manager. But that person should have as much skin in the game as I have, right?
But I mean, you could call your neighbor and your neighbor could tell you to go blow too. I think if they're in the rental program, there's a mechanism.
It's
here.
fine. I'm not saying I'm gonna be the one who enforces it, but I want that
Yeah.
person in Massachusetts actually having skin in the game and not just siphoning off cash.
Right.
It's not so passive when it's in a residential neighborhood.
That's right.
But I'm asking,
Exactly.
is it a problem that our town cannot reach even that person? Is that a problem? I don't know.
Yeah.
Cause
Yeah,
I
the
don't know
owner,
that's
the
a problem.
owner
I'm asking.
needs to be as responsible for the property as somebody who lives on it.
Right, but more so because they're in a program and they gotta register, but is it just because you can reach? a
Oh,
person
stress.
different-
I'm letting that go, but
What's that?
I already said, it's not about me reaching the person, it's about the
Like,
town
well,
reaching the person.
Can the town, is that a problem that the town, like,
Reaches
people
out.
just blow off our town? That's what I'm asking.
I mean,
Not on an individual basis, cause.
Sounds like the fines are
I
gonna.
thought that was one of the reasons that we kept having this pattern of these houses that were disorderly houses, disorderly properties, because nobody really took responsibility for them.
Yeah, ultimately, that's what we want to get to. We want to create, this is not a part of the world or a part of our community where you want to own a property that's left and not managed.
It's absentee landlords for whom parties and inconvenience for the neighborhood is just a cash balance trade-off.
Sure, wanna make-
So we've got one example we've been talking about on North Main Street all the time in this meeting. My sense is,
Well, this is actually a different house than the hockey house.
I know, but so here's the latest example. My sense is they're at the table and they're working with us, they already re-signed the lease, so that is what it is. But I was just thinking a while ago, I was like, we're gonna make sure, we should be sending these videos to those individuals, just so they know this is really gonna happen. You've already rented, you're not gonna change that, but just know this is a pretty big discussion that you should be aware of. But so again, what do we solve if it's not a problem that people aren't communicating back, if people are just blowing the town off and not working with us, that's a problem. But if they're coming to the table and working with us and trying to do everything they can do, and there's a corrective plan, and if we've never had that problem, we're kind of talking, we're going around and round about something that's not even a problem.
I would argue, well, not argue, I'm just gonna suggest that it has been a problem in the past, and you don't know, nor do I, if it's a problem at the town infrastructure level that people aren't calling. So we don't have an answer to that question. And I think based on performance and events in neighborhoods, I would rather assume that there's some correction to make than assume that it's not a problem and we can just go home.
And I'm not playing I don't want to play checkers here. I want to play chess. I want to think strategically about all the different things that we need to do to be responsive to our community, to get our community involved in helping us, correct actions and have a culture, a good neighbor culture in Orono. And it takes a lot of these things. It takes a lot of different levers. And, when we finish, we're going to talk next about how I'd like to take this group's temperature on how we do our work after July 15th. So we maintain, and some of this, I don't know, staff, I tell them this all the time, but this is about sending clear signals to staff what the community prioritizes. And, and that is, it's the things we fund, it's the things we get together to talk about, it's the things we ask for reports on back at the council meeting. And that's kind of, the more we do that and showing the neighbors, 3 years ago, the town had a meeting and nothing can't happen. So this is about all those different, putting all those things on the table that we think can help work, making sure this is a priority. and until it needs to continue to be a priority. So that's kind of how I think about it. I think
Can I
that we
share
need
one
these-
thing about
yeah.
the plumbing, just to make sure, as we wrap that discussion, everybody understands this. So the way a property manager landlord relationship works is typically, I would say vast majority of times, the property manager touches the money from the tenant via rent. They are responsible for certain disbursements to vendors, right? And it can change on the relationship, but typically it's stuff like repairs, things like that, okay?
Yep.
The property owner will then see, okay, there was a $400 repair bill, whatever, the owner then gets the remainder after fees from the property manager. Something like an administrative fine is highly likely in most arrangements going to come out of the property manager's collection as a deduction to the owner to say, we had to pay a $2,500 fine on your behalf. And so the check you get, that should have been 10, is 7,500. You now have that owner's attention, okay? And the reason I share that is if your goal is to get paid on the fine, you may have a higher probability of getting paid on the fine from the property manager because they touched the money. If you go to a corporation that's a little buried in layers, it may be harder to collect.
Right.
Okay.
I don't care if you
Want
want to paid on the
to-
fine. I want to drive owners out of Orono who aren't willing to
Yeah.
be good owners.
Yeah, yeah.
I want owners in Orono who are like the owners that around this table. If you're not willing to do business with Orono, you don't want to do business in Orono.
Right.
This is gonna be
Yeah.
expensive.
Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Though the property manager touches it, and that is the easiest access point to get it, if that's your goal is to get it.
Yeah.
Get that money. Yeah.
Okay.
Great. So did you get that? Yeah.
About the property owner having to come to the town, if there are fines involved or.
I'm
the-
good with
the- Because you're worried that you won't have the property owners, you won't have people wanting to invest in Orono? Because my concern, I didn't understand why we would want to take that off the table, because for us in Webster, I know that that's a major point that we say like, oh, because we all thought that it was, if you got, I don't know, like 2 or 3 fines, then the property owner would have to come here from wherever they were, and it was like, ooh, so we have to call because we'll eventually get there and then we'll really get their attention.
I'm
So-
good with the owner showing up. I don't have a problem with it, especially where the repercussion is a higher fine. I think that's fine, because some of them will, the ones he's talking about, they'll be like, I'm not dealing with that,
Right.
right?
So.
I'm
why-
VP at a hedge fund. I'm not driving to Orono, Maine for $1,000 fine. I'll pay the fine, right?
I like the idea of the property owner showing up, but I was all for it before, but thinking through kind of the logistics that they're throwing up is, okay, it's a corporation, who's the property owner? There's one logistical thing that now staff needs to
That's not
figure out,
everybody.
and, right, and also, I think is the bigger thing is getting the property owner, to Dan's point, that's gonna work with us and help us get this resolved, and kind of, again, who cares, but we're not here to because we want to collect these fines. We're here because we want to stop the problem. So if a property owner says, hey, look, I'm in Virginia, can we Zoom this thing? I feel like, yeah, if they're coming to the table and they're gonna work with us, and because that probably
that.
goes downhill if they have what's that?
I feel like that's so passive. I feel like that's just another one of those,
So I'm okay with Zoom once,
Yeah.
right?
new ones.
Second time you have an offense, you're not taking things seriously, start showing up.
Well, hold on.
It
So-
has to be there somewhere.
So second time you have an offense, but if I've had the Zoom and I've done, what do you think they're gonna do? They're not gonna physically stand guard at the property and make sure something doesn't happen, so, I
But
mean,
they're
if
gonna-
they're working with us, I still think that's a little bit of a nuanced
Let's-
thing,
Let's see, why don't we see it with the Zoom for the first meeting
Yeah,
and
I
then
mean, that's
a
good.
doubling of the fine in person or a doubling of the fine for the second meeting, if that's where we come.
Both, yeah.
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 Final
Can
point.
you ask Matt it's Matt Teresovich, right?
Sorry.
Yeah, his him and attorney in their office.
Yeah, if you could bring it back like that and we could look at that language and then discuss it when it's in front of us.
Final point, the large complexes, any one of them or all of them could be part of a REIT. You just don't know what a real estate investment trust is because the ownership is hazy and you don't know ultimately whether.
I might own some of these.
Also, I know the gentleman you're talking about, Massachusetts, I've done business with him before.
No, I don't.
He's an investor.
Out of somebody's 401k.
He's looking
Yeah,
for a
exactly.
return, and so he's not active at all. So real estate is funny in that you have landlords who are very active, you have investors who are not. And so, but the one participant that is always active is the property manager.
Yeah.
Owners, sometimes they're investors, sometimes they're landlords, sometimes they're REITs, and those are all very passive. and it's a return.
Yeah.
And so property managers are always active. So that my only point is, and I don't mind holding the owners accountable. I like it. Just want to make sure you guys mechanically understand. The only active party you have in every one of these rentals is a property manager.
Yeah.
This is a passive owner.
All right, we'll get it
So
figured
the
out.
only two bullets left, just so we can close the loop, yeah, so you know, is that we are updating the list of what a disorderly property can include based upon the feedback. Not gonna get into the line by line, because we'll end up talking about every single one of them again, so we're just gonna say that I shared those all out to them. And the other one is that we did specifically get the officer giving a penalty at the scene, they're gonna go over that. And the other one is that what can we do for notice of violators, property address, owner address, etc. Where, when, and how, what are the consequences?
So we'll get some
So-
feedback from the.
And we're getting some feedback from the attorney before we say, yeah, we're gonna
This is notice to the public.
notice to the public, yep, whether it'll be online, website, server, sign on their property, all those different variations, what we were going over, so.
What did you talk about? What's the first line again? And you took out any, whether it's a single family or a multi.
300 and 300.
All right, yeah, so bring it back, we'll look at it, we can see it in writing. You think we'll have something for next week?
He told me, oh, so I pushed for this week, and they kind of laughed. Said, we'll have something to you by the end of this week. That's where I'm at, so hopefully I'll have it.
They are responsive, so they're good.
They're just-
First insurer, right? So,
Yep, for instance, George.
all right, in terms of updates and timelines, so next week we'll have, so the July 15th is when. It's July 14th or 15th, that council meeting where this group is supposed to have a report. I'd like us to be able to sequence something. I'd like us to be able to go into that meeting. Throwing it out there that we go into that meeting. We have a council meeting tonight. And then we've got our next council meeting. Sorry. Is not until the 14th, right? So my plan for tonight would be to just give a little bit of an update on kind of where we are. So that the council gets a good neighbor committee update on kind of our work and schedule. And then our final meeting, our final scheduled meeting as a group, and I'm gonna hold you on this because I think this work's important and needs to continue in some shape. Is the 14th, and then that comes into the town council meeting on the 5th. With a report, and then we've been talking a little bit about what does it take in terms of our council process. I've learned, my fellow counselors and the one sitting across from me, as many as any, just give me a lot of good feedback on how to work the process in a way so I'm not surprising anybody with a brand new, hey, let's vote on this law tonight. Because Leo's not gonna do that ever. So we're gonna have to sequence this. When we come in next time, I think we'll come in with a sequence of what the discussions at the council level look like if we want to try and do something in August. We're gonna talk tonight about canceling one of maybe our first August meeting. Is it our first August meeting that you want to?
I thought it would be nice for the council after budget to cancel one in July or August.
Yeah.
Pick one, so I think we're leaning towards August, and I think you're leaning to the first one.
Yep.
Because that gets us rolling into right before and after Labor Day.
Yep. And I'd like to be able to vote on this. If we come up with an ordinance change for the quarterly property, I'd like to be able to, at the council level, be able to vote on it better by our Monday, August 28th meeting. If that makes sense for people. That what we talked about. Yep. Okay, so that's kind of, and we'll frame that out next week when we come in. We'll have kind of a sequence of that for people, and I'll talk about it a little bit with the council and get their preferences. In terms of this group, I think it makes sense for us to, not every week, but I think it makes sense for this. I would like to ask people if they'd be interested in, and then you gotta go back to the council to, expand it, change the order, but I'd like us to continue meeting on some kind of regular basis, maybe quarterly or every other month as we move this on, because we need people in the community who are advocates, or I call them validators. So you're a validator, right? You're gonna be someone who's gonna go back into your neighborhood. Chad, you're gonna go back into your neighborhood. Cynthia will do it in here, and Gracie, you'll be a part of our validation, the work we do with the university to share, and our landlord, participants, talking to people about the work we're doing. We'll get reports from staff. We'll ask staff how's it going? We changed this ordinance. We did this big rollout with all this communication. It can't just be one and done and we fixed it, because that's not gonna work. We have to continue to be So I'm wondering what the interest of this group would be, maybe every other. You tell me, like, when does it make sense? When do we know how we did with the start of the school year? Is it sometime in early November? Do we meet in early November? And then again in right after spring break, as we get ready, and it doesn't have to all be tied to the academic calendar, but I think this group needs to continue to have conversations.
I would agree with you, because I think you don't want to set it and forget it.
Yeah.
Because then we've failed what we've done, spent all this time doing. I think if we met quarterly. Hey, how's it going Western side? How's it looking down the tough end? Or have you heard from others having issues? You might hear something. Police chief might say, we're getting a lot of calls down on Fourth Avenue. At least we know what's going on and we can meet and discuss. Something else might come up, or we might say, hey, geez, Dennis, your tenants are doing fantastic, should be some positive stuff too, if we do see changes, along with the negative stuff.
Yeah.
So I agree, quarterly's fine, we're perfectly honest, in the early days, like in the fall, I'd be happy to be monthly too, whatever the group wants to do. But I just want to put on the radar, right, so we have this disorderly property work, which is happening, right? We have communication work, which is happening. And you were talking about the process of queuing up ordinance change, so I just want to put on the table that I don't know if we're done with other ordinances. In particular, I would still like to see property registrations, maybe not, landlord cell phone numbers, but I'd like to be able to just look up, is this property next door to me actually a rental property, and what's the grandfathered number of students, unrelated people living in this place. So that's an ordinance change, I think. And I think the noise ordinance should get a look about whether it's serving its purpose or, as a tool with, parties and people with drum kits and things like that.
And we could sequence those things in terms of, there's so many different elements to this. There's the education communication piece of it. There's the town budget element, how do we resource this? Because, what you prioritize, you resource what you prioritize. And then there is the additional phases of this work. We're gonna get out of this. We're gonna come, I think, it feels like, we're gonna come into the end of, July and August, and we're gonna have some accomplishments in terms, but then what's next? Is it, how do we align the noise ordinance better with this, or the rental registry? And then we could sequence conversations around that, on specific items that people want to address. And maybe the sample handout that we share with landlords for something, maybe that's, it's not working. Are people calling 866-4000? Is that working? And we can assess and lean into, and find ways to lean into things that need attention.
I don't know, we might want to also just be open to the fact that we're very narrowly focused in this iteration of a good neighbor working group, on some landlord issues and some tenants issues. But the name of the committee, to me, indicates that this dovetails with so many other facets and aspects of our town. A good neighbor committee could be part of Orono Festival Days. It can be part of library. So it may be that if we keep the energy and keep moving and more people hear about it, that this could be a really useful platform for a lot of Orono citizens to respond to things over time that will shift. And I would like us to be open to that, because being a good neighbor is a lot of things, and we're addressing something very particular here.
Yeah, it's a nice cross-section of participants too. So we don't have to make a decision on that, but it sounds like there's a sense that people would be interested in having some follow-up.
What you're saying is you made a bunch of new friends and you're gonna miss us and you wanna see us once every.
It's every quarter, so.
How many more times are we set to meet?
July 14th is our last, so we've got one every Monday until July, so that means more. Yep, 3 more.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just FYI, all the rental properties are on the GIS map. There's a layer there, which means you can go search it, pull the layer down, and it'll give you all of them, and you can just click on which ones that gives you whoever the owner information, any information. It does not give you rental specific information, like how many islanders, that sort of thing, but it does give you the property.
Okay. I mean, to me, a big one is this grandfathered, non-related three people, 5 people. Because it's really hard for me to call up code enforcement if I don't know how many people are supposed to be living in the house.
Well, I think it's gonna be hard if we call code enforcement and say there are 4 people living here. They'll staying over or something.
That's gonna be hard to It's covered in the law.
What's
So,
that?
It's covered in the stat ordinances as they're written.
Yeah.
so my suggestion is just calling.
Yeah.
If you have a question about a property, call code enforcement.
Please.
They can inspect, they can go, we do it all the time.
I
People
mean,
call and we go all the time.
I do it when I invest in a property, I'll contact code to say, they tell me it's grandfathered for this, is that accurate? And they tell them, so.
Help though, like with the number. Now, why are there's only supposed to be 3 people living here, why are there always 7 cars?
Yeah.
There'll always be
gotta
variables,
dump it in.
and until we dive into it, we're not gonna get any.
Did you know about that layer on here? You probably did. Did you?
Tracy, do you have anything else as we adjourn?
I don't know.
I do not, but I will still be available to meet at this time at the very least, going into this school year. I don't have any classes on Mondays. So I look forward to continuing this with everyone.
All right, well, thank you, Gracie. All right, thank you.